Hello, this is Digital Accessibility, the people behind the progress. I'm Joe Walensky, the creator and host of this series. And as an accessibility professional myself, I find it very interesting as to how others have found their way into this profession. So let's meet one of those people right now and hear about their journey. All right. Well, we are set to go for another episode of this podcast where I have the opportunity to talk with an accessibility practitioner about their life and work with accessibility. And today I am very pleased to be speaking with Marie van Driessche. Hello, Marie. How are you today?
Hi. I'm okay today. I'm very hot. It's very hot here in Amsterdam today. It's about 30 degrees Celsius, maybe more. I'm not sure what the Fahrenheit translation will be, but you can Google it. Otherwise, I'm doing great. Summer is starting. Life is nice and relaxed. I hope you're doing great too.
Well, it is good, and I believe it. I know it's not as hot as it is in Europe right now, but I am located on a place called Vashon Island, which is near Seattle, Washington, where my company Blink has its headquarters. And so it's good to make this international connection. And I want to thank you for participating today. As always, a good place to start is if you could tell us a little bit about your current position and the work that you're involved in.
So I'm here at the company that I'm in now. It's called Ank Inc. I've been here now for 4 months. And I'm doing, it's a development and design company for it's a non-profit for non-profit organizations. That's their mission. They work for charities, for social impact goals, and I'm a UX designer. I've been that for a while. I used to work at other places. So I made the change to this company. I look at designs. We work on different projects. I work with clients as well. So, and I'm also very much invested in accessibility. And some things are going well, but it can always go better. So from the UX, UI perspective, but also from coding. So as a company, you can always improve. So I'm trying to get that ball rolling.
Well, what are some of the things that you often do on a daily basis or a weekly basis? What are some of the things that make up the work that you do for accessibility in your position?
So we have requests from clients. This is about applications or websites that they don't want to use or they can't use anymore. They ask us to have a look and we give them advice. We consult. We advise for design, UX, and content. And then we also work with our development team. So from code base, we also look at what we can do to make it better. And then we go back to the customer, we give them advice, but we also stress the urgency of accessibilities because lots of clients don't know that yet. So that is something that we take into account for the MVP, the minimal viable product. So we hope to affect change that way. And we have an interesting situation where we had a refinement for one application or one app. And they said what we want to do is we want to take away as a contact option the email address. So we want people to give them the opportunity to only call. And I said, well, phones are not very easy for me. I want to use email. That would work very, very well for me. So if I hadn't been here, they would have changed to a telephone number rather than an email address. So that would have had a negative impact on their accessibility. So that is something that I try to do, to make people aware of what tools to use, but also how the hierarchy works. There is a disadvantage for websites of apps when they're done, when people develop them themselves, give the content, and then it goes wrong. So I'm hoping that we can go back to basics and give them advice before they start, rather than after the fact.
Well, I want to learn more about the work that you do, but one of the important parts of this program is to find out how people found their way to being an accessibility practitioner. And so for us, it's often a combination of lived life, work life experiences. What would be, let's go back in time, and maybe you could talk about your first exposure to the importance of accessibility, and then we can move forward in time to get back to where we are today.
So there's two separate ways that led to me being here right now. So I started at a very small company in Utrecht, where they designed for the government. They always said accessibility is important, but there was also a focus on making all the administration stuff more accessible, not only the WCAG levels and requirements, but also to make everything accessible to all participants, all members of society. And that is something that I didn't realize until then. So I learned something about that, started learning to code, but then focused more on design later on. And so we had some standard issues that you need to take into account when you develop a website. So that is something that I learned. And also someone asked me, how do you experience accessibility as a deaf person, as a designer? What is your perspective on web accessibility? And I never thought about that before they asked me that question. So I started to talk to people, and I realized that many people don't understand how you can make internet accessible to deaf people. So most people say, text is text, so people can read it. And if we have a video, we can put subtitles on it and captions, but that is not enough. A lot of deaf people have issues with the spoken language of their own country. So for Dutch deaf people, Dutch is more difficult than Dutch Sign Language because the grammar differs. Same would go for America, I suppose. So there are a lot of issues involved in that as well. So I put together a talk that I have delivered on a couple of occasions, where I gave people some information on designing for deaf people. But that doesn't solve. That's not people. Most of the time think one or two solutions help. But no, there's an impact on lots and lots of domains. There's an impact on hierarchy, or impact from sound, and all kinds of other things that are present in websites that exclude deaf people and that the outer world is not aware of. So it's experiences from my own life, from my friends, and I started to research that. People told me about their issues. And on the other hand, I have an aunt who is nearly 70, and she is a hearing person, but still I see her experience trouble with accessing internet as well. So the most simple things she doesn't understand, she finds it difficult to navigate, and she asks me to come and help her. And then those are kind of like the three things that make me that led me here. So that made me decide I want to do something with this. And the fact that I'm deaf myself, obviously, I can kind of like point to where things go wrong. I can tell that from my own experience, but also from my own expertise. And so that led to me being interested in accessibility. And it's my conviction that everybody should be able to use internet, regardless of what issues you may have. It should be usable for everyone.
Well, thank you for sharing that information about your experience being deaf. And I would like to ask a little bit more about that. For your own education as a person who is deaf, what was your experience with accessibility as it was at that time to be able to support you? Different people grow up in different environments with different support. And so I was curious as to what your support was in your learning and in your environment.
Well, I had conversations with lots of people, and especially the first company that I worked at, they taught me, but I've done a lot of research myself. I went to courses, but that was also very difficult because most of that was based on coding or sound. And that was also always an issue for me. And I wanted to show that I was an expert, but I meant that meant that I should be able to work or follow a course that was based on sound. So the basic rules of the WCAG, yeah, as an expert were very difficult to fulfill. So that was really difficult. But luckily, I did manage to succeed. But also I hope to get more experience as well and get closer to developers as well and exchange information. And the deaf community is very small, very diverse as well. It's actually the same as it's a very good representation of society in general. So we have you have friends that look like you, or but especially the people that are not in my own bubble. Those are the people that I learn the most from. So in the communication that works on Facebook, for example, that is something that I can learn a lot from. And the way that people communicate is mostly via sign and then via video and not via writing. So less chatting than video messages. So I'm looking into that. I'm doing some research, but I do that by myself. So it's all based on my own personal experience.
One of the reasons I want to ask you about that in more detail is because it is a problem that within organizations, if the tools and the support isn't there to people with who may be deaf or blind, it's difficult or impossible to be able to be an equal partner in conducting the work. And so I know that that's a problem that I see among organizations in my field all the time, where we may be doing accessibility for users of our products, yet within many organizations, we don't have the support built in to be able to have people like yourself involved in the process. It sounds like you've been able to find your way for a long time as a graphic designer and in user experience. Were you just fortunate in your experience, or you just find a lot of support at your organizations?
Yeah, they did give me the space to go to course. They gave me time and space to invest in those courses, for example. But it's a very interesting question. Yeah, I think that I always have to do that extra little bit harder, more work. I have to work a little bit harder. I have to go out actively and get the information. The world is based on sound. When you're hearing, it's very easy to get access to information, gossip, the things that people talk to each other about at work. So those are the things that I don't incidentally learn that information. So I need to actively go out and get that information. And that is very tiring sometimes. And it's also not fun. It would be better. Well, the fact is that because of these circumstances, I have lesser opportunities to get a promotion or to get another position, because those kinds of talks are, people have those at the coffee machines, and that's the information that I miss. And that makes, that causes me to have to work a little bit harder always. And sometimes I have good days and sometimes I have bad days. But I've noticed that I need to find an environment for myself where I feel safe and connected, and where I can make sure that people are willing to develop some awareness. But it is a constant hurdle, and that is something that I have to accept in life. It's part of my life. I wish things were different, but they're not, and that doesn't mean that I should change who I am. I'm perfect the way I am. I'm very happy with the person I am, but I think that for people who are like me, they should be able to have other positions, higher positions as well, to show as a role model that it's possible. I mean that. I mean, some people have to work twice as hard to get to where they want to be. And if you're a role model, I think I'm aware of that. I'm also a teacher. I teach at the University of Applied Sciences here in Amsterdam. And I started teaching this year, and I am a supervisor for the MA theses. And that works really well because they see me as their teacher. They see me as someone who is a good UX designer. I'm not a deaf person to them. So that means that I am a role model to them as well, to show that it doesn't really matter if I'm deaf or not. It's about the skills and the competencies that I have. So I hope that when they go out into the world, they also have this experience that it's okay to work with deaf people, for example. But it's something that is information that I need to keep. I need to keep informing people always. So not only the deaf community, for other deaf people that it's possible to get to where I've come, but also for hearing people as well. But yeah, the end of it all, the summary of this whole story is the fact is that I work hard. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story and experiences on that. And let's now talk more about your work for accessibility. And so what are some of the things that looking forward into the future that you are interested in working on to create better accessibility? Are there any particular areas that you're interested in focusing on for accessibility in your organization? Are there certain things that you feel maybe haven't been given enough attention so far that you'd look forward to working on in the future? So I'm putting out a lot of ideas there, but just briefly, it's just about your idea of what you're looking forward to working on moving forward.
What I've noticed is if you talk about accessibility and inclusion, those are very hot topics right now, and that's good. That's very good. But where I would like to go is that we don't need these terms anymore. A world where Why would we have to specifically label things as being accessible or inclusive? If that was a fact, then we shouldn't have to label those things anymore. So that would be my ideal. And what I hope for the future, it doesn't really matter where I am, but that accessibility would be a standard requirement for anything what your end product is. And how to get there is through education, and to have people get that ingrained in their vision and in their mission of their companies. But I think we will get there, but it will take some time. I think that people have an idea that designs have to be beautiful, or that accessibility is not beautiful, but it doesn't have to be ugly. It can go hand in hand, beautiful and accessible. And I think many people don't realize that yet. I think it's good to show, to give some representation of that, so that lens, that awareness. And I want to give some examples. The thing that I can do is show. Well, how a grandmother uses internet, for example, so that that the awareness grows. And that is what I miss still, is attention to diversity. Many design companies, they work in their own bubble. They work together with people that look like themselves. So they don't meet other perspectives of other people. They still keep going in their own world. But I would say get out of that world. Friction isn't the bad thing. So look for that. And as far as me personally goes, what I would, I'm a very hopeful that I can grow in my career, that I become someone that leads a team, for example. But I don't know how that works still, so that I still have to develop and grow in that direction. But I think I'm diverging a little bit. Is this an answer to your question?
That's exactly the type of response I was looking for, just to get your thoughts about the future.
Okay.
And then one last area I wanted to talk about is more about the practical way that you work with accessibility at your organization on a regular basis. And for example, when is accessibility brought into the design process at your organization? How is it talked about within members of your team? For a lot of organizations, it can be really difficult to identify the best way to bring in accessibility and then do it in a way that has measured effective results at the end.
Oh, that's a very good question. So I've been here for 3 or 4 months. I'm still finding my way. I'm still trying to find out where to drop this topic. I have in my previous work, I've met all kinds of ways to work with accessibility, from doing checks to working with a backlog. Where accessibility can also be part of the plan. So there's all kinds of different ways to approach this. But what I want to do is have it tested. But when people test, they test within their own demography. But I want to encourage them to go outside of their own bubble. There are so many more people that will use your website or your app, but if you don't take them into account when you test, and you lose all these potential clients. But I see now most of our clients now are aware of the fact that accessibility is important, but it's not high enough on the priority list yet. So I hope that my expertise and my experience will help to get it on the agenda a bit more. And also with my colleagues. So we're working now on organizing an accessibility event internally within the community for clients as well. And I hope, yeah, I think that for clients, it also has to do with money always. There's money involved. So I think we should approach it or think from that perspective as well, and try to explain that that if you, and give them some data on, if you don't do it now, then you're missing out on this particular group of people, which will give you this amount of money loss, which makes you, which makes it interesting to invest the money earlier rather than later. But it's very difficult to work with those kinds of prognosis because they're not real numbers. So I'm trying to look to, to find more ways to approach this. There are more ways leading to Rome, obviously. So I'm trying to see what works. The flow is not really defined really so yet, but if we have a good defined workflow, then I can identify also the moments where we can start discussing accessibility. But for me now, it's still trying to find my way within the company. But it's going to be an exciting time in the coming months. And I think we learn a lot from each other as well. And it's important to exchange experiences and also share results and good practices, but also bad practices. So I gave you the example, like the one utterance that I had, the one example that I had of the company that wanted to skip the email address and only wanted to have the phone number. There was just one remark that I made, and that had such a huge impact because they would have gone ahead with it if I hadn't made that comment.
Well, Marie, it has been a pleasure to meet you and have this conversation with you. I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to possibly, may meet at a conference sometime in the physical world, but good luck with all of your activities.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Same to you. Thank you for your time.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.